Well, hey everybody, welcome back. We are here with another Broadway Limited N-Scale locomotive. Broadway Limited has been kicking out some N-Scale lately and doing a pretty good job at it. Today we're looking at the SD70ACE in N-Scale. Only other N-Scale manufacturer that's had these is Cato, however you want to pronounce it. So we'll take a look at Broadway Limited's offering. One key difference already is the fact that this is offered with sound. They're Paragon 3 sound, which means you can have a subwoofer that is separate and wirelessly add some bass to the sounds. But just pulling this out of the box here right off the bat, kind of roll with this quickly here. Speaking of the box, in the bottom is a manual. Beneath all this foam and the little humidity pack, the manual has 28 functions on that, just like the steam locomotive I looked at earlier, the heavy and light Mikados. Then on the other side it talks about thanks for your purchase, it's ready to run on DCC or DC, and you'll need 16 volts for DC, etc., etc. Standard address of 3, and it also talks about that rolling thunder system that I briefly mentioned. I think it's a pretty cool accessory to get the kids into the hobby, and pretty cool for adults too, because I like it. Alright, let's get a closer look at this, pull out the foam, see what this locomotive is all about from Broadway Limited. I might have been incorrect in my first assumption that just Cato that does SD70ACEs also. Fox Valley, I think, is talking about it. But here is Broadway Limited, and that's all that matters right now. Pretty impressive out of the box. They added a lot of foam to protect the handrails, and although it's hard to tell with this black on black scheme, these handrails are very, very straight. The only little dimple in them is me ripping out the foam, and I kind of pressed it back and it's staying pretty good. But these handrails are very, very straight. We'll start with the front. They have the modern PTC antenna array up front for NS. You can see two ice skate antennas, I should say, and a main antenna down the middle. The print looks good. Truck detail looks great. Equally painted stair steps with the yellow kind of safety paint, looks good. I'm going to zoom in a little more so you guys get some of that extreme detail. As somebody mentioned on their Steam, it really looks like an HO scale locomotive that has that much detail. So anti-climbers painted, the NS logo and number boards are applied very nicely there. Headlight and ditch lights, LEDs, snowplow, accessory hoses coming through. You have your coupler here. Sand filler hatches on the nose. Cab window sunshades, which now we're slightly out of view here, so we'll move that way, but cab window sunshades, and there are also cab interior details. No personnel, but interior details nonetheless. I think it'd be hard to cram a little N-Scale personnel guy in there. So compartments and battery box doors all great looking. The exhaust up top, dustbin hatch looks good. There's also a mounted horn, as you can see right there, and S looks very clear and legible there. And as we move further down, you got the radiator fan grill area. Radiator fans look good, all black with silver back one. And you have nice grating, which I'm just going to take away from you guys for a second. That's not see-through, but nice grating nonetheless. And a decent weight to this locomotive. Feels like a metal chassis for sure. It's packed down with metal for good pulling power. On the rear, another LED light. LED ditch lights again. And we'll see if all that operates in operation and what the color temperature looks like. Handrails, MU hoses, and even coupler cut levers, which are hard to see on this black on black scheme, but nonetheless they are there. You'll have to trust me on that if you can't pick them out. And here's a view of the other side. More of the same, but there's a brake wheel back here that's nicely done, and more detail, including some nice depth on all those compartments going down the locomotive side. So overall, nice detail once again. Broadway Limited's killing it in detail. Let's see if they kill it in operation. All right, Broadway Limited can be started up by a few different ways, or a couple different ways. F9, which is the extended startup, will start this locomotive up and shut it down, or you can just move it by increasing your throttle. I'm going to do F9 because I don't think I've covered the extended startup on an N-scale model. So here we go. So what you just heard was the locomotive engineer walking up to the locomotive. You hear boots in ballast basically walking up to the locomotive and getting in. You hear the door shut. You hear the emergency warning for the startup of the locomotive. And then you hear the locomotive start up, a couple engine cycles kind of getting warmed up there, and then it's good to go. I will go ahead and cover shutdown as well. Alright, so that's the shutdown sequence, and now I'll show you how we can just start it up by moving it. So it's just that simple. We'll go ahead and go through the regular sounds now. Here's the bell. Horn. And then the alternate horn here. So there's the alternate horn. We'll go ahead and stick with that one for now. Coupler sounds, F3. Have to move it to get those sounds to pop up. Put this back in focus in the cab area for you at least. Engine rev up and rev down can be manually adjusted with F5 and F6. I won't do that too much. Get you a little RPM though. Alright, so that's that. F7 handles the ditch lights and Mars lights, which we'll take a look at in the dark a little later. F8's volume mute. F9 we already talked about, start up, shut down. Several other functions we won't go into, but let me just tell you, Broadway Limited's packed this thing out with 28 functions, including all the way to 28. So full functions, including background sounds, such as city sounds, maintenance sounds, radio sounds, farm sounds, industrial sounds, and lumberyard sounds. So you have a fully functional N-scale locomotive. It's come a long way from when I entered the hobby just 10 short years ago. We're going to move this thing now, see how it operates under slow speed control. So I will zoom out. We've already taken a look at the details. Maybe in a little bit more so you can see it move. Alright, we're moving this thing to see slow speed control. Got it at a few speed steps here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't think the rear ditch lights illuminate. I know the front ones do. I'll show you that in the dark here. Switching directions. There's 1 speed step. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So smooth for the most part at slow speed steps. We did have a little bit of track power or track power to the locomotive issues. Okay, now I just want to show you the lights. They are pretty much a flat white LED. To my knowledge, maybe a very, very, very slight blue tint. Choose the horn, but it also oscillates the ditch lights, so we'll check that out. Seems like pretty effective, fairly realistic. So it's pretty good oscillation actually. So overall good there. Like I said, it has a rear headlight. I do not believe it has rear ditch lights, or I haven't figured out how to turn them on. So do your research there if you're concerned about rear ditch lights. So another feature is when you get to step 3, the cab light turns off. So as you see there, the crews are ready to move along. Alright, when I mentioned I was doing this review to some friends of mine, they asked me specifically to compare it to Kato locomotives. I know I get pronunciation wrong on stuff I don't really do many reviews on, but comparing to the two, the Kato definitely has thicker handrails and I don't think as many up-to-date features. The Broadway Limited locomotive, the SD70ACE, seems more realistic in size, not as bulky. Updated antennas is just kind of an era thing, but the horn size also seems smaller as well, so you N-scale experts could probably be able to tell which one's correct. From what I've seen of prototype pictures, it looks like the Broadway Limited is more on par with the horn size. So other than that, Bob could probably mention some differences. I've got him here. I know he mentioned that Kato has some running problems on one of his locomotives. Mm-hmm. But you know, anything else you want to chime in, Bob, since you're the N-scale expert?
Well, on previous BLI ones, I've got one of them that like to just run away from the DCC control. But if I used it in smaller steps for increasing or decreasing the speed, it would act just fine. This one seems to be working just fine, doesn't have that problem. And one of the things I do notice is there is a lot of detail to the BLI ones, hence the price point on that. You know, you're going to talk about a non-sound Kato at about $115, $125 for the same thing versus whatever this Norfolk Southern BLI is going to cost you with all the sound. But I think the features are well worth it.
Yeah, Broadway Limited offers only sound on these. With Kato, you'd have to pay for sound installation stuff, and you're probably, even with those older prices, are going to exceed the price point of the BLI from what they're available at brick and mortar hobby shops, online retailers. So overall, I think it's nicely done. In the case of Kato, I don't think they've done any tooling in a while. Maybe an older tooling. Broadway Limited, this is fresh out, but very, very good product, and I would deem this the best SD70ACE in N-scale from what I've seen currently from Broadway Limited. So they're killing it in N-scale. They just have entered the N-scale market and are not taking any time getting around to getting some really nice products out that are well executed and run well, including the Mikados we looked at just a while ago. With that said, I'm going to leave you with a run-by of the Norfolk Southern Broadway Limited SD70ACE with Paragon 3 sound, and we'll see you next time right here on my channel. Take care.